Hello everyone and welcome to DryerDays Art Studio. I'm Catherine and I'm so happy to have you here. And today I'm going to be working on this dark blue agate slice piece. And this is the tray mold that I'm actually using to make this piece. I really like this mold because you can use it to make a tray or it can be an art piece. And this is a brand new mold in my store, so it is available at DryerDaysArtStudio.com. All of the products used will be linked below in the video's description. And so here what I was trying out was I've seen this done before and I had never tried it myself. I wanted to see if it would work. So I'm taking a silver gilding paint and a paintbrush and applying it around the inside there of the mold, because the idea here is that it will stick to the resin and when we demold it'll be on our art piece beautifully, and it does work. So I should have probably actually done it on the outside edges too, but I didn't want to ruin the whole mold in case it didn't work, but I can say that it does work. Here we're just starting with a layer of clear resin. And once I've got that resin down and in all the nooks and crannies, going to hit it with some heat to pop any bubbles. And I can use my handy dandy little silicone stick here to get any bubbles that have formed in there, which can happen, and those little silicone sticks get those tiny little bubbles out really nicely. And this is some of my blue silver glass glitter that I'm putting in the center. I'm going to use some teal pigment here, and then I'm going to use my deep blue pigment here. I'm just going around following the shape, and I'm going to keep going around with these colors in the same order to keep building onto each other to really fill in the mold. Used about 5 ounces of resin for this piece. And I really wanted this black, which is the black pearl pigment from my store, to be up against that outside edge. I wanted the outside to be much darker. And since we have that clear, you can see it's kind of not totally going up against the edge there, so I'm going to use my stick here to really help move that black against the outside edge. And this is a color that I made that is the deep blue pigment along with the black pearl pigment mixed together. I really wanted that gradient look of the teal, lighter blue, kind of going out to this deeper blue. And I wanted to add a little bit of depth in and around that center hole part. So that's why I added some of that dark blue in the center there. And now this is my silver fine glitter. It's so sparkly and beautiful. And again, just kind of following along with the shape of the mold as I go. And following along basically with where I have the colors from before. Popping some bubbles as I go here to make sure we're getting them out as we build. As I've mentioned and as I've been showing here, just going along, building, building, building. I really wanted to make sure the silver was really popping out, so I kept kind of paying special attention to that area, especially as the resin was getting thicker and tightening up, and I knew it wouldn't sink as much. Kept coming in with that silver to make sure that it was staying vibrant. We could see it from this side. I had no idea what the underside was going to look like. I was assuming the underside was going to be the top or the front facing, but it ended up being this side. I really, really favor this side a lot, and you'll see that when I demold. And I let this cure on a flat surface for about 48 hours before I demolded. As you can see there, I had it on a baking sheet that was lined, and that way I could take it off of my table very carefully and place it on the floor, which is extremely flat, to make sure it was curing. You can see here, nice and cured. Those dark colors really blended nicely together on the outside. I'm just gently coming around with my thumb to gently pull that silicone mold away from the resin. And here we are, and I'll flip it over so you can see the other side. So you can see very bold on this side. Not exactly the look I was going for, but the colors really did pop on that other side. But this is the one I tend to like a little bit more, so we're going to work on this one and expand on it and add some detailing. So using that same gilding paint that I applied on the inside of the mold, I'm just going to rim the edges because that silver did turn out, like I said, on the inside of the hole there. So I want to add some highlights on the top of the hole to really make it pop out. I just wanted to show here that when you're done with that silver gilding paint, if you just use a little bit of rubbing alcohol and swirl your brush around to clean it, you can reuse your brush. I do like to use really fine tip brushes for my detail work, and when I find brushes I like, I want to keep them and take care of them because sometimes they can be hard to find again. So if you take care of your tools, you can definitely reuse them. And I'm going to use some art resin here and mix it up. I did speed this up for time purposes, but I kind of wanted to show that you genuinely need to mix your resin per the manufacturer's instructions. So in this case, it's going to be like 3 minutes. I have gotten so many questions lately, people asking me why the resin is still tacky, why it's bendy, why is it not curing correctly. A big part of it is making sure that the resin is thoroughly mixed for a minimum of 3 minutes. I mean, it's going to depend on the brand you're using. Every brand's a little different. But what I do is I actually set a timer, or I will watch my clock and watch for exactly a minimum of 3 minutes while I'm mixing and really getting in there and scraping the sides of my cup, scraping the bottom of the cup, because when I first started in resin several years ago, and it didn't go very well, it was because it was operator error. I was not mixing the resin thoroughly enough for long enough, and my pieces were not curing correctly. It was just a big mess. Everything was sticky, and I gave up. I was just like, oh, never mind. This is a huge mess. I can't deal with this. And I think a lot of people are getting discouraged because they're maybe missing this very important step. I also should mention too that it needs to be the right temperature. You want to keep your resin at about 75 degrees Fahrenheit. And so I actually have a space heater in my room because I work down in my basement, which stays very cool. And so I will actually turn a space heater on when I know I'm going to be working, just to warm the room up. And if the resin really needs to be warmed up, I will do a warm resin bath in the bathtub or in the sink with some warm water to warm up the jugs of resin. So I just wanted to mention that because I've been getting a lot of questions about it lately, and I hope you guys find that useful. Okay, I went and got a piece of parchment paper so that I don't get any resin on my table here. And I'm just going to do a thin layer of resin. Now, if you've worked with silicone molds before, you know sometimes they can get this little lip on this side of the mold as it's being pulled out, because that resin is kind of settling in the mold, and as it cures, it can form sort of like a little dam around the edges. And I am going to apply this resin to kind of sit right within that dam. So we shouldn't get too much spillover, but in the event that we do, I just didn't want to get any on my table, and that's why I got the parchment paper. And we won't stick to the parchment paper either in case there are any drips. This right here is an alcohol wipe that I'm using to get any dust or fingerprints. I've been pretty much just handling this with gloves on, but I wanted to make sure there weren't any oils or dust or other debris on the surface of this before I put my resin on. So we're just going to apply the clear resin here. Okay, so using a little bit more of that blue silver glass glitter that I used when I was pouring the mold, I'm going to very carefully come around with this little spoon. I actually include these spoons whenever you buy mica pigments from me because I think they're just really helpful. And the nice thing about this is I'm just using clear resin, so if these pieces start to move a little bit, I can use a popsicle stick to kind of gently push them back into place along the inside of the hole here where I want them. And now I'm going to come in with these black mica flakes, and I'm using some tweezers this time. The nice thing about the parchment paper too is it's going to catch all the extra flakes that fall off and that extra glass glitter as well. And if I want, without moving the piece too much, I can come in with a dry brush and kind of come along the edge there on the parchment paper and sweep it all back into my cup, and then I didn't just lose all of these mica flakes. And again, to reiterate, the nice thing about the clear resin is I can kind of push these flakes back into place along that edge and not have to worry about ruining a design or anything, or the colored resin, because we've already done that. That's already been done. And I'm just going to go around the entire piece here and lay down these black flakes. Cure for several days. As you can see, it's still sitting here on the paper. I don't really mind about losing these flakes and stuff because I have a ton more, so I'm getting a little messy here. Sorry I'm a little off camera too. Again, I was kind of getting used to my new setup here in my new house, but I just wanted to show here that some of that resin did go kind of up and over the sides because I was really pushing those flakes out, and as long as you come in and catch it soon enough, you can just pop any of that right off. And the same goes for your resin coasters too. If you have some of these extra bits, they will just pop right off, or you can use some craft nippers too. I have seen people use like X-Acto knives too. If you feel comfortable with that, go ahead. I do have an X-Acto knife that I use in my studio, but I don't usually encourage stuff that I feel like people could be getting hurt with. So it's completely up to you what you want to use. And then just a little close up here, you can see all that really cool texture. And I did decide that I wanted to add some more fine lines to this to really make some of these areas pop. So these are the metallic markers I'm going to use. I got these from Michael's. I want to show, I mentioned this in another video too that I just did with these metallic paint markers. I always shake them with the cap closed because I have shaken them before and gotten metallic paint flying everywhere. Real quick here, going to use another alcohol prep pad to clean off my surface. I do have these in my Amazon store, and they should be linked below too if you're interested. I keep just a giant box of these handy, and I use them all the time. So they're just a nice thing to have in the studio. But the reason I keep the paper towel there is because I will shake the marker. As you can see, you got to pump the pen a little bit, and when I do it on the paper towel, sometimes it's nice and clean like that. Other times it comes exploding out. I had to learn the hard way after kind of pressing on a nib on an art piece one time when metallic paint got all over the piece, and I pretty much lost the piece to never do that again. So I am mentioning this as I mentioned it before because I had a few people ask me about markers sort of exploding or leaking on them. I've had a lot of this happening recently since we moved, and we are in a higher elevation, so I don't know if that's affecting some of my supplies. I'm not sure. But regardless of the cause, it does seem to happen with every brand of pen. It doesn't seem like one paint marker is better than another. They all have that tendency to leak. So just keep a paper towel handy and you should avoid any catastrophes. I just think this is really satisfying to watch drawing of lines, so I like to include that in my videos. But here she is, all done. This piece will be available for sale in my store soon. I'm going to be displaying some artwork at a coffee shop, and I want to have some pieces to put out, so this will probably be one of them. But this is a really awesome mold. Please check it out in my store if you're interested over there at DryerDaysArtStudio.com, as well as all the pigments and glitters I used are also available there. Come find me on Instagram at DryerDays. Thank you so much for watching, and please like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, everybody, keep on pouring.